Rich, where did you watch the Michigan-Ohio State game?
at home with Susie and the kids. Just that's it. My phone. I put my phone away, Dan.
Wow.
Not to be trusted. But I knew it too, and I knew the reason why. I said it on the show last week, and because I knew the Big Ten refs had a coup de grace coming, and I didn't want to tweet about it or text about it or do anything stupid. And sure enough, they had something nice and cooked up. But I will tell you this. I agree with you, and I will say it all the time. Rod Woodson told me that Chuck Noll would always tell the Steelers this before going out on the field: play better than the ref's ref. And when it all comes down to it, the turnovers and the mistakes allowed Michigan to have the door open for some of these penalties to not be called or be called, and that's part of the reason why they got 2 losses right now.
What do you make of Harbaugh after the game?
I don't blame him. I feel the same way. And I know that he's going to be criticized for whining, complaining. I heard the show open for you. As you know, I listen to your show going to work every day, like most of us here in Los Angeles, and that's part of the criticism. But he's only giving voice to what a lot of us feel, and it happens all the time. I mean, I'm serious. The Big Ten has a major problem with its officiating. It's going to happen in Indianapolis this coming weekend. It happens almost every time in a big game. And against Iowa, Michigan had a phantom face mask penalty called on it that allowed Iowa better field position for the game-winning field goal. But again, don't put yourself in that position by fumbling the opening kickoff or throwing interceptions or turning the ball over or being inefficient in other parts of the game. You open yourself up to that, and that's where things currently stand. I wish my school was not involved in this 2-loss morass. I wish they would be in a much better position, and unfortunately, they're not right now.
Yeah, as I'm watching, there's no doubt in my mind Michigan feels like the better team. They just made mistakes, and it didn't come down to penalties. The spot I didn't like for J.T. Barrett, but, Harbaugh's got to keep his composure there. You can't get flagged for throwing your clipboard, even though it seems very trivial.
Yeah, I mean, look, you even remarked about Urban Meyer's
cheerleading.
How he's throwing, he's but I don't want to say antics because it's not. He's into it.
Yeah.
And everybody's into it. I mean, there's a reason why 17 million people tuned in the middle of an afternoon here, because they're watching how much it matters to everybody involved. And so, to flag that sort of thing is ridiculous. But that's not really what, that's not really what cost them. I really don't want to come across as I'm making excuses. With the officiating, but there's always an issue with it. Always. I can even show you the text that I did exchange with 2 of my friends from college, saying, it's coming, and I think it's going to come in the form of a pass interference penalty on a long down and distance on 3rd down, and then 2 seconds later, I'm like Nostradamus. It happened.
Does anybody cry in the house?
I did scare Cooper over the spot of the football.
Oh, so you yelled.
I did.
Yeah.
I did. But after that, though, it was a teachable moment, Dad. After that, it was a teachable moment.
Your wife was teaching you.
No. Well, she does, as you know, Susie, she does that all the time.
Yeah.
But, yeah, you know what I mean? So bottom line is this. Way too many mistakes. They had the game. In many different ways, not sewn up, but in their control, and couldn't close it. And, but I will say this too, Dan. I've spent 10 years prior to Harbaugh. I guess after the 1 versus 2 game, things kind of changed with the Appalachian State loss, and then Lloyd Carr going, leading to Rich Rod and Brady Hoke, and then there were just so many losses that were so brutal. And I would just look at games like that Saturday with other teams playing in them saying, you know what, I wish my team would be playing in something that mattered so much, with so much on the line. And now it's happening. And I absolutely take great solace in that. But this one really, really hurts.
He's Rich Eisen from the NFL Network. If we had a Final Four in the NFL, and you could take just the four best teams, it doesn't have to be two from the NFC, two from the AFC.
Right.
New England, Oakland,
and then
Dallas.
I would take Dallas and Seattle. I would.
Oh, you would take Seattle?
Yes, I definitely would.
Yeah, it's just a weird team. They've gone 3 games without an offensive touchdown. They got
I know.
roughed up in Tampa.
I know. The Russell Wilson offense sometimes disappears at the most head-scratching times. But still, they're battle-tested. They're really great on defense. They really are. They played that game yesterday, gave up a couple of early touchdowns to Mike Evans, and then essentially wiped them out from there on in. And had the offense been more efficient and put points on the board, they would have won that game too. And Tampa's clearly a hot team right now. I like Seattle a lot. Dallas is absolutely the best team. But if there's TB12, who's the greatest equalizer of all, that's sitting there in New England. And I like the Raiders a lot. Yesterday we can make a lot of Derek Carr and him going out and how it switched the momentum around. But Khalil Mack was a guy who won that game for him yesterday, and he could be that Von Miller type coming around the edge that gives New England issues when should they meet on a January day. But I would take those 4 teams.
Yeah, we've been talking about that, trying to figure this out. The Chiefs and Broncos finished last night. I didn't agree with going with the kick only from the perspective of if you're going to go for a 65-yarder, why not run the ball on the previous down and run some clock just in case you don't miss it? You can't give Kansas City any opportunity here. And that was the only thing that I weighed. It's 38 degrees. You're kicking. He'd never kicked 5 yards farther than anything he'd ever made. And I don't care if you're making them in pregame. I've seen guys make them in pregame all the time, and they get to a game and it's different. I disagree with it. Your thoughts in the moment on that kick?
Oh, I loved it. I thought it was great. You're punting. You're basically telling everybody, let's play for the tie and go home. And in the long run, that would be the big boy approach, just to say that I'm looking at the long run picture, and they'd be sitting there at 6th in the standings right now in front of Miami instead of 7. But, that was Von Miller and that defense that was making sure Alex Smith could hardly move the ball.
Unbelievable.
All night long. So I'm thinking I'm going to give my guy a chance to win. But you're right, making sure that they either tie or don't win, as opposed to either tie or lose.
Well, you can kick it, but just run the football to run some clock.
No, that makes sense. And even if you do that, you're making Andy Reid burn his final timeout, which they needed.
Yeah.
So, I'd agree with you on that front. In terms of Michigan, by the way, Michigan being the better team, the issue is one of the top 4 teams. The issue is what's the criteria? If the criteria is win-loss, Michigan is not one of the best teams. Top 4 teams. They're not. And 1-loss teams should get the opportunity to go before a 2-loss team. But if you're sitting here saying, what is the criteria? Is the criteria having a team that's playing hot? Well, then if that's the case, then Michigan is not one of those teams either, having lost 2 of the last 3. If you are looking at a game like Saturday and saying, I want one of those for the national championship, to be one of the semifinal teams, you want something that intense, that closely contested, then maybe you take the 2 teams that actually just played it and play it again. See how that goes.
Wow.
I don't know if that's a criteria. If it isn't, then Michigan is not one of the top 4 teams in the country.
Who's on the program?
Mooch, Steve Mariucci, Chris Long, who was the closer of the Patriots yesterday, and the Patriots are playing his former team in the Rams coming up this week, so it should be an interesting chat with him. And I was hoping it would be a much cheerier chat. We've got Michigan royalty, NCIS Mark Harmon, the son of Tom Harmon here. Would have been much nicer result. Would have been a much nicer conversation, but I'm looking forward to chatting with him anyway. So it'll be good times with Mark Harmon here of NCIS.
Yeah, but Mark only cares about UCLA. He doesn't care about Michigan.
I don't know, though. I mean, when Devin Gardner was given his dad's number, he was part of the process of discussing it. I mean, he's still somewhat involved in the Mason Blue. But You're right. He's a Bruin.
Keep your head up.
Obviously.
Keep your head up.
Thanks, DP.
And I won't call you a Michigan apologist, even though it sounded like a Michigan apologist when you were blind supporter. How's that?
Dan, I said we made the mistakes that one-loss teams deserve.
Okay, but that sounds like you're still a Michigan apologist. There's nothing wrong with being a Michigan apologist.
But I'm not apologizing. What am I apologizing for? For playing one of the classic games, for my school playing one of the classic games? It made too many mistakes.
Michigan loyalist, how's that?
I'll take it.
All right, good.
Sold.
God. All right. Have a good show.
Yeah, you bet.
That's Rich Eisen.
The Dan Patrick Show, weekday mornings on Audience.